Hi, I'm Jay Hurst. Keep an eye out for a new episode of The Devil's Lettuce every Monday, where I'll interview industry professionals and like-minded people who are leading the way in the cannabis industry. Dr Teresa Towpick is a general practitioner based in the Blue Mountains who has been practicing conventional medicine for over 20 years. Dr Towpick has always been curious of other methods of healing, which has led her to become an advocate of medical cannabis. She founded Medijuana, a website to educate the general public and health professionals about the medicinal properties of cannabis in an easy-to-understand format. Teresa, could you elaborate on that intro and let the listeners know how you got into the cannabis field?
I've been quite new in this space. It only started about 2 years ago. Until about 2 years ago, I really didn't know anything about medicinal cannabis. To me, it was just a drug of addiction, and I believe a lot of health professionals continue holding a similar view. So I felt like it was just a dangerous drug, highly addictive, to be avoided, a gateway drug associated with multiple problems. But in January 2016, I became interested after I've heard that it was going to be legalized for medicinal use. So then I started reading and researching and very quickly realized that I'm dealing with a very important therapeutic agent. So I realized that knowledge awareness is the key when it comes to anything in life, but especially in cannabis. We've been brainwashed into that thinking that for so many years, we believe the dogma, the lies, and the prohibition. So I became very passionate, and I like to see it as an important therapeutic agent that should be used judiciously and responsibly in a proper clinical setting.
That's absolutely right. Could you tell us the current process for patients and doctors to gain access to medical cannabis in New South Wales?
Well, it is a huge story. At this stage, it is extremely difficult and convoluted. I can just tell you the story about one of my patients. In the beginning of July, quite a few people approached me to apply. However, looking at the forms, I felt that it's going to be very complicated, but I thought I need to learn about the system, so I'm going to try. I applied for 4 of the patient, and I applied to TG doing the usual forms from SAS category B, and providing clinical justification and the relevant studies. All of them got rejected straight away because I didn't have a letter of endorsement from specialists. So then one of them, the lady who is in her late 60s, we eventually found the specialist who was willing to support our application, just only going as far as saying that I support your application for medicinal cannabis. And that was the beginning of September. So the TG approved it, but we needed to apply to New South Wales Health because we were asking for a low THC, high CBD preparation. So we again went through the same process, duplication, lots of work, lots of forms and so on. And roughly, I think it was probably about 20th of September, around that time, I received the email in the morning stating that New South Wales Health is considering my application, and one of the chief medical officers is going to talk to me about it in the afternoon. So we had this conversation. However, my feeling was that this person was against cannabis, and it actually felt like interrogation. And anyway, on the 5th of October, the application was rejected. So why was rejected? Because they said the patient lives too far from me, about 4 hours drive, but they didn't have anyone else wanting to support them. They said that specialist is not formulating a monitoring plan, management plan, but the specialist is too busy to do that. There are a few other, points also saying that this is experiential, not approved, and there are better options, and the whole list of issues. So that was rejected on the 5th. And one of the prominent lawyers agreed to support us, and then in the beginning of November, we appealed for the internal review, and that was again rejected on the 23rd of November. On the same day as New South Wales Health announced that initiative, that we're going to have a hotline, that from January we're going to help, that it will become easier to prescribe. So, look, at the moment, the patient is still without that cannabis medication. There was actually an interview with me published in Daily Telegraph on Monday. Now, New South Wales Health is claiming that they really want to help. They're establishing the hotline. They will be guiding doctors from January and so on. But I like to see how it's going to work. At the moment, look, who knows how really authentic the whole situation is. I'm hoping that it will, but also feel that a lot of, people in New South Wales Health are very much stuck on evidence-based. They claim they need more studies. There's no evidence, even though there's a lot of evidence. So I believe that the process is going to be slow. And in the meantime, a lot of people simply don't have time to wait, and they simply go to black market. And this is of some concern, of course, because, look, I really would love to prescribe it properly, judiciously, without going through all of this paperwork. I'm a busy GP. I really don't have time to go through that. And it's really quite deflating and sometimes demoralizing as well.
So there's a two-part application, is that right?
It depends on what you apply. If you just apply for CBD only, then it's only just TGA. But most of the time, CBD only is not enough. Cannabis is quite a unique medication. It needs to be patient-centered and based on individual dosing. Everyone is different. So majority of people need combination of actually THC, CBD, but also other components are important, terpenes and flavonoids. So it is a whole plant medicine. Yeah, so at the moment, because most of the time we need THC, CBD, so we need to apply to both TGA and state departments.
In the unlikely event that a doctor gets the go-ahead to prescribe medical cannabis to their patient, what types of strains and dosages are available to them?
Once again, there are different formulations. For example, everyone is very different. So, and I think at the moment there's a bit confusion. It is a bit confusing about available product. For example, I applied for Cannabis 120, which is distributed by Health International in Western Australia. So once again, it is going to be ongoing learning process because everyone is different. So we will start slow. It could be just maybe a few drops at night and then titrating up slowly and waiting for the appropriate response. So, but also the problem is that if you only apply for one product, that product may prove not to be okay or good enough for that patient. So to do it properly, we should do it in a clinic when we have access to different formulations that could be done properly, because we need to find that particular thing. And because we are just learning. This is something very new to us doctors.
You mentioned the prescription of Cannabis 120 and sourcing that from Western Australia.
Yeah.
But is a majority of medical cannabis imported from overseas?
That's right. Most of the time at this stage, yes.
Okay. Is there a story you could share of how you've witnessed the effects of cannabis treatment?
Okay, I didn't witness so much myself, but a lot of people write emails to me. And they share their stories. I actually written about it in my recent blog, Cannabis and Palliative Care. The patient came to me and she shared her story about her sister who died from multiple myeloma. So she had really bad type of that malignancy. Unfortunately, she was going through multiple treatments and she suffered quite a lot. In the end, there was no treatment, just palliative care. But she was receiving multiple doses of currently prescribed medication, Oxycontin, and so on, which didn't control her pain. She was riddled with tumors throughout her body, but also she didn't want to take cannabis, even though family suggested that she should, because to her it was something unchristian about it. And she didn't want to go against her specialists, against her doctor's advice, and so on. But my patient described that, she was going through agony. So eventually her family decided to give it to her without her knowing about it. And they just gave her they called crystal marijuana, 50-50, 50 THC, 50 CBD. I don't know where they got it from, somewhere black market. She didn't disclose and I don't want to talk about it. But anyway, she was giving this patient just a small amount. She said it was like the size of half a grain of rice. And she was giving this to her 3 times per day. And then the patient was very comfortable, happy, pain-free. So the patient didn't know about it. She attributed this change to a divine intervention. She felt that God is helping her. So even, the specialists were questioning my patient, if she's giving cannabis, but she denied. So it was happening in secretly. But, she's describing that the last days of her sister's life were full of joy, nice memories, pain-free. She even was allowed to go out from hospital on one of the, I think last New Year's Eve, when she was singing, and she was really happy. But following day, she collapsed in the bathroom and she broke her cervical cord and unfortunately became quadriplegic, and shortly after she passed away. But the point is that she passed away from that horrible malignancy, but she passed away happy, slightly euphoric, pain-free. So to me, it was a very significant story. And can you imagine if we could do this openly without this patient kind of feeling that she's breaking the law? But she said she would do it anyway because seeing her sister passing peacefully, happily, accepting, that was the main gift that she could give to her.
What's the general standpoint of other GPs and medical cannabis?
Look, I feel that majority of GPs are warming up to that. But obviously doctors are cautious because we want to do the right thing, but also we are sort of working in a certain medical, legal environment. So on one hand, it might be difficult because we've been so brainwashed into thinking that this is just a drug of addiction. But also I know that, especially GPs, they are becoming more and more interested. But the major deterrent is the paperwork. And a lot of them saying that, look, it's too hard, too much paperwork. We don't have time for it. I feel that if the paperwork was reduced and the process was streamlined, that the doctors would be more and more likely to be involved in it. And basically, what's very important, we just need to continue educating ourselves because cannabis just offers so much, especially, in my opinion, in general practice scenario, in the management of chronic debilitating pain, which is not responding to so many other therapeutic agents legally prescribed. We have patients who are taking the cocktail of OxyContin, benzos, anticonvulsants, anti-inflammatory. Just the list is long. This pharmaceutical agents, unfortunately, are not controlling their pain fully, but also impair their functionality. These patients quite often feel like zombies, but they're unable to function properly. So I feel that cannabis would be very, very important therapeutic agent in the management of chronic pain, but so many other conditions as well. Also, I like to say, I don't mean that this is just a panacea for everything. Time will show. But the so-called anecdotal evidence is quite overwhelming. You know, to me, if you see and hear millions of people around the world reporting beneficial effects, we can't just put it down that, they just imagine that. It is a statistically significant evidence, and that really shouldn't be ignored. I feel that cannabis is quite unique. It needs to be investigated differently, not just only through the typical randomized controlled trials, but also so-called observational studies when we can actually interview patients and see how they are responding and so on. So there's lots of work to be done here.
Has there been any negative responses in your community because you do prescribe cannabis?
No, I don't hear any negative responses. In fact, I don't hear a lot of responses to you. I think they're just watching and observing. There's like few of them approached me already, quite, sympathetic. But I think that GPs generally are just waiting and wanting to see what happens.
Do you think the hotline that's set to take off at the start of 2018 will assist other GPs in prescribing medicinal cannabis?
I need to find out. I'm going to actually test this hotline. I will be applying in January. I'd like to see how it works. The problem is just hotline. Will I have enough staff to answer all the phone calls? Will they put us on hold? Will it take a lot of time to be on the phone? How intrusive are questions are going to be? Is it going to be like each time you call it sort of almost interrogation? So at the moment, I don't know. It could be a waste of time, or it could be helpful. I'm going to find out. I'm definitely going to start applying from January, especially for the relevant cases like chronic pain management, not responding to other therapeutic agents.
What's a cannabis-related resource or tool that you can recommend to listeners and why?
Well, there are many resources. I mean, if you Google, you go online, there's just so many publications with PubMed and so on. There's also a lot of really good, very knowledgeable experts in the field of medicinal cannabis in Australia. We have Lambert Institute. They have probably a weekly newsletter publishing lots of different articles. There's also really great people in the field like Dr. David Caldecott, Justin Sinclair, just to mention the few, Leah Biziani, also Professor Ian Brighthope. And at the same time, I got involved in education as well. we founded the organization Medijuana, as you mentioned before, and I feel that awareness for education is very important. So I've written a very basic book called Introduction to Medicinal Cannabis, Easy Guide for Doctors and Patients. This book doesn't pretend to be any academic paper. This is basically just point by point explaining the importance of medicinal cannabis, little bit of history, the molecules, endocannabinoid system, basic medical conditions, treatment options, the possible drug interaction and side effects. So that book is meant to be read in a simple way and then encouraging just to take further studies. So that's one of the aspects of Medijuana. But also we launched the online interactive course, again, introductory. It means that this course will be evolving, we will be updating, putting more and more information. And also, we are aiming to build the team of doctors, researchers, scientists, providing better and better courses and ongoing education. So there's quite a lot happening in that space, and there's a lot of really knowledgeable people involved.
What vision do you have for medical cannabis in Australia?
Well, my vision is that in future, I actually would like to see the few things. I would like to see a proper medicinal cannabis clinic. And I would be very interested to work in this kind of clinic where we could have access to different formulation of high medicinal grade where we know exactly where it is coming from. I would like to see the development of network between ethical growers, manufacturers, pharmacies, and doctors so we know exactly what we're using. So let's say if I have a formulation that tells me there's so much THC, so much CBD and terpenes and flavonoids and so on, I know that this formulation is going to be each time the same. So the consistency, continuity. Also, I would like to see the cannabis affordable as well because at the moment people, spend so much money. So I would like to see that model of medicinal cannabis clinic where patient can have proper medical assessment, guidance, and this in the recommendations can be sent to a general practitioner. So just like any medicine. Also, we need to, as doctors, we've been trained to rely on synthetic single molecule pharmaceutical agents. So it kind of challenges our thinking, the whole plant medicine concept. But it is very important into healing. So that would be my vision. Once again, proper medicinal cannabis clinics and also the network, ethical growers, manufacturers, pharmacies, doctors working together. So we really, can do the justice for that important ancient medicine.
I think that holistic approach would work quite well.
Yeah. Could
you let us know how listeners can follow your work and stay in touch with you?
Well, the best way would be to my email, which is Teresa, Teresa @medijuana.com.
That's medihuana.com. Would you like to talk about the petition that you have going at the moment?
That's right, yeah. We've started this petition I think, roughly about 6 weeks ago because I felt that we need to become more involved. So the petition is called Doctor's Petition to Stop the Unnecessary Suffering and Made Cannabis Accessible and Affordable. So far it's going very well. It's, I think, close to 23,000 signatures. So at the moment we're just collecting signature, and I believe that the more people sign, the better, because in New Year we're going to start addressing politicians and people in power to sort of take a look into that and see that huge public support and importance of that medicine.
I'll make sure those links are in the show notes so listeners can get involved in the petition. Dr. Towpick, you mentioned your online cannabis education course, which is on the Introduction to Medicinal Cannabis for Health Professionals and Patients, which can be found on medijuana.com. And if you'd like 10% off that course, enter MEDI10, MEDI10 at the checkout.
Once you enroll into the course, it goes for 12 months, so there's plenty of time. You can sort of complete it in your own time. You can start and stop whichever way you like. And also there will be ongoing updates as well.
Thanks for listening to the Devil's Lettuce podcast. If you enjoyed this show, we'd love you to subscribe, rate, and give us a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you have a suggestion for a guest on the Devil's Lettuce, head over to thedevilslettuce.com.au and click on Suggest a Guest. Please do not take any information from the Devil's Lettuce or its guests as medical advice. Thanks for listening. See you next time.